As we approach the island of Janitzio, where the fisher folk live, we see a great concrete statue. It was erected by the Mexican government. The statue is about as high as an arm can be climbed from the countryside. Lake Pátzcuaro is about 250 miles west of Mexico City. The lake is nearly 30 miles of islands, the largest of which is this barren rocky island called Janitzio. The island fishermen live in primitive adobe buildings centuries old. Most of the houses have only one room. They are roofed with homemade tile. As we slowly cruise our boat along part of the shore of this island, as they wash their hair and their clothes at the water's edge. These island people are Tarascan Indians. Like their ancestors, they live much to themselves. They mix very little with the mainland or mountain Tarascan tribes. Most of them still speak only the ancient Indian tongue, even though Spanish has been the official language of Mexico for over 400 years. On the shore, nets are drying. The dugout canoes we see along the water's edge were each cut from the solid trunk of a tree and brought down from the mountains by manpower hundreds of years ago. The Indians did not have any burros or oxen then. The Spaniards, when they came, introduced the beast of burden to Mexico. The dugout canoe is still the islanders' only means of transportation. As we continue our cruise along the shore, we must remember that the food of these island people is largely fish. To vary their diet, the men and boys hunt for ducks and other wildfowl. They use a three-pronged bamboo spear, which is thrown with a primitive throwing stick called a tsipaki. The spear can be thrown much farther with the throwing stick than by hand alone. They spear the ducks in flight, and if a bird falls to the water wounded but can still swim, the final capture is very difficult. The bird just dies below the surface when it sees the spear coming, and then a long chase and many throws are sometimes necessary. And so we leave the island now and go out on the lake and find some of these hunters. Watch Mishawa, a 12-year-old boy, as he spears a duck in the air. The duck is wounded. It falls to the water and dives. He waits for it to come to the surface, and then he throws. And when he picks up his floating spear, he has another duck. And is Mishawa proud? As we turn from Mishawa, we see a man paddling toward us. We hail him and ask him if he will show us his throwing stick. Most primitive people all over the world stopped using the throwing stick when the bow and arrow was discovered. But here on this beautiful lake in Mexico, it is still used every day. We see it is about 24 inches long with holes for 2 fingers. It has a groove with a cup at the other end into which the spear shaft fits. Suddenly a wounded bird surfaces to our left and we cry, "There he is!" The hunter swings and throws, but the bird dives and gets away. He retrieves his floating spear, and as the duck comes to the surface again, he turns and throws, and this time he does not miss. Then he brings the bird slowly, carefully to the dugout. He does not want it to fall back into the water and get away. He tells us it is a pato pico azul, a bluebill duck. Good eating, he says. Very good. As we renew our cruise upon the lake, we see a group of fishermen using the famous butterfly nets of Lake Pátzcuaro. They are beautiful, graceful, and used nowhere else in all the world. The boats form in a circle, and the men put down their nets. Then the fishermen wave their paddles quietly in the water to drive the boat broadside. Thus the tiny 2-inch fish are trapped in the nets of a slowly closing circle. Here one of the islanders turns toward us to trap any of the little fish which may have been startled by our boat. Because the tiny fish are easily frightened, the fishermen move quietly and very slowly. These people and their ancestors have been fishing just like this for hundreds and hundreds of years, and probably will be doing so for many, many years to come. And now they paddle quietly away to find a new spot to put their nets into the water again. And now our boat approaches a group of 7 fishermen working with a huge drag net. It's a big net. It takes a long time to make, needs constant repair, requires a large crew, and many families must share in its ownership. Nearly all fishing on Lake Pátzcuaro is done with this kind of net. With it, the largest fish are caught and the largest catches are made. The net is about 15 feet wide and has floats at the top and weights at the bottom. This makes it hang straight up and down in the water. When the net is pulled in, it brings to the boat all the fish which were surrounded when the great circle was laid out early in the morning. They shake the net to remove the water and the lake bottom mud. Later, all the families of the men will gather on the shore of Janitzio to wash the net and hang it up to dry. It will be shared by 7 men and their families. The fish will be used for food and as a product to be sold or traded in the market. It is early the next morning now, Friday, market day in the city of Pátzcuaro, and we are down at the landing to see our island people come to market. And far off in the distance we can see the island of Janitzio and the tiny white speck which is a statue of Morelos. Dressed in their Sunday best, market day is a happy day for the islanders, especially for the women. It's a holiday where they can get away from their workaday chores. They cannot come to market every Friday. Sometimes it is several weeks between their visits. So the women particularly look forward to market day. After their fish are sold, they can shop for vegetables and other things they want, and they can gossip, too, with friends from other islands. And so they unload the things they have brought to market, a bag of fish and mats woven from water reeds. Also from this barren island where growing anything is a difficult task, we see an old woman with an armful of lilies, not for sale, she tells us, but for a friend. Here we see a woman with the typical Tarascan skirt. It is just a long strip of woven blue cloth gathered loosely at the waist and held in place with a twisted scarf. And so they get ready for the long uphill walk to the market square. They have no burros, so they will carry everything on their backs. And here we see the dugouts, empty now, as we too go to market. In the busy marketplace along the walks, neatly stacked on woven mats, are the vegetables brought by the mainland people. They are Tarascan Indians too, but people whose way of life has always been as tillers of the soil. They bring to the market vegetables and other things that the fisher folk need. And our island Indians with their fish? Yes, they are here too, with no method of weighing, no wrapping paper, no shopping bags. The buying is as simple as this: how much for what my hand can hold? And when the bargaining is completed, the buyer patiently waits until his hand is filled. How these island women love to bargain. It's half the fun of market day, giving a slightly larger fish only after much protest, asking more than they hope to receive, getting all they can, giving as little as possible, driving a sharp bargain, something to brag about, something to talk about on the long way home. And now, far around the lake, we are looking down on the landing at the little village of Aron Garicuaro. To this primitive place on another market day come the island women with their fish. Here here too come the mountain men, down the long weary footpaths from deep in the mountains, carrying on their backs and on the backs of their burros the huge loads of wood the island people need for their cooking. After centuries of wood cutting, there are no trees left on the flatlands near the lake. Now, only in the mountains, many long miles away, are trees to be found. Here, as in the days of long ago, no money is used. Fish is traded for wood, and wood is traded for fish. This is one of the few spots in all the Americas where the custom of barter still exists today. Here is a woman who feels she has made a good trade. Of course, our island people have all the best of it. The women bring up from the boats only a few fish at a time. This makes the mountain men think there are not many fish. If the women have any fish left, they can just put them in their boats and take them home again. But the mountain men, to save hauling their wood all the way back to the mountains, must make the best bargain they can. And now these kindly, gentle people are going to their boats. They are starting for their homes on the island of Janitzio, and we must bid them farewell. And so we say in the language of Mexico, Adios, isleños de Lago Pátzcuaro. Hasta la vista. Goodbye, islanders of Lake Pátzcuaro. Seeing you again.